Welcome to Wine by the Case.
Where we uncork legal insights one bottle at a time.
So, this episode, we have a Florida man. Chris and I are both Florida attorneys. And, everywhere across the world, I think they do hashtag Florida man. So, here is a story. I think this is a doozy, don't you, Chris?
This is a doozy. It's a doozy, and it is just one of those things you're like, okay, they were both crazy, but this is just, this one's ugly.
So what we have this beautiful girl who is in the UK, and there are some reports saying that there was some diagnosed mental health issues that she had. But what she does is from the UK, she goes on to a spicy bondage chat room
Fetish. Yes,
site.
it was fetish site. Yeah.
Right. And so she's on that site, and while on that site, she pretty much starts advertising or posting that she is looking for someone to torture her and murder her. Lo and behold, a Florida man, this shouldn't surprise anybody, says, me,
Yeah, pick me.
I'll do that.
Oh,
So now here's where it gets like insane, because at that point you're like, okay, they're on this site and they're kind of doing, I guess it could be said they were doing like this fantasy talk. But we go where she gets on the plane from the UK and flies in to Florida. And
Come on, this has got to be South Florida.
well, actually, it wasn't. It was Gainesville. My little gator. It was Gainesville. So she she may have flown into South Florida and went to Gainesville, or she could have flown into Orlando. I didn't have her flight itinerary, but she ends up where he is in Gainesville. And the torturing and videotaping of this in the ultimate murdering of her. But there's a video where she's very bad, bruised and beaten, and appears to have been tortured prior to her murder occurs. And this man, Florida man, is arrested and obviously charged with murder. So now where we are, there's not been a trial. So he is, of course, deemed, these are all allegations of things that happened.
But didn't you say there's a video?
There is a video, but there's still allegations. Maybe there's an explanation for that video. These are all allegations. He has not been convicted. He is deemed innocent until proven guilty.
But I do have one question for you, though. So the video existed. She wanted a video. Did she ever say why she wanted a video? Did she want it to be on the fetish site? I mean, not that matters, but it's just so. And then he released it? I mean, this is...
I don't think he released the video. I'm not quite sure about that. I think that he almost was the video, the allegations that have come out. Obviously, more will come out of the trial, but I think the video was taken almost as insurance that this was an agreement that they had, was kind of what the video appears to have been, but who the heck knows? Obviously, more is going to come out. But he was charged. So there's a lot of conversation flying around in the legal community about what the heck are his defenses going to be. And one of the ones that was thrown out is, could this be an assisted suicide type of defense? Because she did have this mental health, which we believe allegedly had been diagnosed, and not just simply somebody saying after the facts, obviously there's mental health issues present. Now, as most of our viewers know, their assisted suicide in the state of Florida currently is not legal. So, Chris, I mean, what do you think about that possible defense?
It's not going to go anywhere because, as you said, in the state of Florida, there is no such thing as assisted suicide. It simply doesn't exist.
Well, it exists, but it's not legal.
Right. Again, yeah, true. It exists, but no doctor's going to do it for you unless they're doing it illegally. But at the same time...
wait, let me just throw in there. He was not a medical doctor. This isn't a Kevorkian type of scenario. He was not a medical doctor.
This is somebody on a fetish site, like you said, fulfilling a fantasy to a certain extent. But in the world of assisted suicide, again, it's supposed to be a medical practitioner. And when you look at the states that do have what they call death with dignity, there's some people who've been on the forefront of it for a long time. Oregon, one of my favorite states for wine. But there are actually quite a few states that allow it. California, Colorado, Delaware, DC, territory, but still Hawaii, not shocking. Maine, Montana.
Wow, it's a lot
Yeah.
more than I thought.
New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, and Vermont. But
So how many
not
total? How many? I
so
lost count. I didn't mean to put
12,
you on the spot.
12, 12. So
Okay.
12, including the district. But
Yeah.
why? Even in those, there's levels. So what you can do in New Jersey is going to be much more restrictive than what you can do in Oregon. California, Oregon, Washington have similar rules, but Oregon is leading the way on no residency requirement.
Well, but to just back up to unpack that a little,
Mm,
they all have a requirement that you have to have a doctor or
yes,
two or three say
yes.
that deem you to be terminal.
Terminal,
So
absolutely.
mental health alone in
Mm-mm.
any of those states
Nope.
would not qualify because mental health, although horrible and debilitating,
Hmm.
and we're not trying to minimize people
No.
who suffer from what they suffer from mental health, but it is not under
Right.
considered
Right.
terminal
Right.
alone by
All the
itself.
states, yeah, they have a terminal diagnosis. Some have a 3 month, some have a 6 month, some have a year. But even then, they require at least two medical opinions. So Oregon requires two medical opinions. They can be from a list of doctors who are approved to provide such an opinion. So they've done the training, and it has to be with 15 days. So you get one, and 15 days later you get another, and then they give you the medication to administer yourself.
I think
Other
that's a
cases.
key.
Mhm.
That's a big thing. So you have to be able, and I know in this space of assisted suicide that that's a big thing because a lot
Mhm.
of times people who are terminal
Mhm.
may not be capable of administering it. And in this particular case, it is
Yeah.
not my understanding
Mm-mm.
that she administered the
Oh God, no.
means of death
No.
that ultimately the medical examiner found that she had died from.
And that's why, this notion of the longer time period, because stage 4 bone cancer, there's no coming back from it. There is never coming back from it. It's just a brutal, painful death. So when you get to the point that it's so severe, would you necessarily be competent to provide I can do this, and 15 days later I can do this? So that's why I think they provide that longer time. So that's why limiting it to these terminal cases and providing time kind of helps avoid the situation that we're talking about today of, but I just want to die. I mean, we all know, you've heard suicide by cop. That's the, I'm done. If I do something really stupid and charge at a police officer with something in my hand, they're going to shoot me. Because people, it's kind of hard to unlive yourself. And people prefer that someone else do it. So again, mental health issues, all sorts of reasons. But I kind of wonder if one of his defenses is going to be a suicide by cop sort of thing of, that's what she wanted. Now, again, we as lawyers can say that's not a valid and enforceable contract.
Well, yes. Murder is a crime, and even if somebody agrees that you can commit the crime, that
Yeah.
doesn't take away the fact that if it's an actual
Yes.
crime, that you can do it. So, yeah, exactly. And I think it's an interesting position. And nobody, just for clarification for our listeners, there hasn't been his attorney has not filed something saying that, there's not been anything from his legal counsel saying that's
Right.
going to be their defense. And I would think that that would not be a smart defense to make in front of a jury or a judge, but it was kind of thrown around just from
Well,
a analytical standpoint that
yeah,
where is that line in the sand? Like if we're going
yeah.
with assisted, when can somebody say and can they dictate the assistant? And also, I think it's key in those states that you brought up. I think the manner in which they're
Hmm.
saying that the person is going to die or
Hmm.
commit suicide is laid out. It's
Yeah.
not like they're saying, okay, well, we've now okayed you for a suicide and you can go hire yourself a firing squad. There's a lot of guidelines
They're
surrounding
guidelines.
this.
And again, they
Yeah.
call it death with dignity for a reason, so that you can kind of choose place and time, have who you want with you. Don't quite have that in this case, but I do think the notion of what they're going to have to present to a jury is going to be interesting in this case, because you're already on the fringe of society. You're already on a fetish site. You're already on things that the average person sitting in that jury box, let alone in Gainesville, Florida, because college students for the most part don't surf. you're not going to have this really group of people who are familiar with all the things that are on fetish sites, let alone be exposed to it. So I think in this one, they're going to have to desensitize the jury to those issues anyway. So why not say, let's go ahead and say this
Right.
is what you wanted. But as we're talking about Oregon, where my favorite wine comes from. Everybody who's watched this
Well, wait, before
podcast
you get to the
knows.
wine, I just wanted to comment on that. I do believe you're correct. There's gonna have to be some desensitization. I can't even say the word, there to the jury. But I also think that the other issue is that we're really going to come down to what degree. In other words, they're going for first degree murder, which is
Mm-hmm.
premeditated.
Mm-hmm.
Was it
Yeah.
is it a
Sounds like
premeditated?
it.
I think the defense that they're gonna have to put on is more to try to get, like, a manslaughter or something, but the big problem that I see as a trial attorney is we've got the torturing. So, where do we and this gets into consent, right?
Yeah.
Because when you get into bondage, the big thing about and I'm not a bondage expert, I
I'm like,
just
you
trying to
just
put
keep
that out.
talking. You just
But
keep
the
talking.
big thing when I watched, what was it, 50 Shades of Grey,
Yes, gotta have it safe word.
and I ended up having a child from reading 50 Shades of Grey. But the big thing was the consent
Right.
portion of it.
Right.
So, yes, you could potentially be consent to that bondage
Mm-hmm.
aspect, but where does it cross over? And I mean, are they going to have a bondage expert come and talk about this? Because when does it cross
Exactly.
over from consensual play,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
to now we're to torture? And I think that
Mm-hmm.
gets into what you're talking about, kind of educating the jury
That,
about the bondage. But in all reality, they don't really even need the torture aspect. They've got this potential first degree
yeah.
murder aspect that
Yeah.
he could go away for. So it'll be a strategic take on what the state attorney,
It,
which
it,
is also known in other states as the prosecution, is going to take with regard to this.
well, and again, if you're sitting there on that jury and having to be educated in all these things, I think a very lovely glass of wine from Oregon
Like, I
would
don't want to
be
talk about this anymore. I want to talk about the
really
law.
important because this one's hard. I mean, I mean, to have it on video, again, if that's what she wanted, but I go, it's not a contract that's enforceable. But this
I
is
don't
from
think
my,
I think it's an outcry to mental health. I mean,
Mhm.
it's an outcry to someone who had whatever those diagnosed mental health issues, which
Mhm.
will probably come out. And it's just so sad that
Mhm.
she wasn't able to get the necessary help that she
Well,
needed. But it also gets into and this, and we don't really what. And we can do another episode on this. The obligation, does that site have any legal obligation
yeah, to
to
monitor, yeah,
monitor this, number 1.
yeah.
And number 2, why didn't and I'm gonna assume the other people on the site, because this wasn't a private chat room.
No, no, it was the entire
I'm
fetish
gonna
site, yeah.
assume that they probably thought that this was just banter and not, like,
Well, is it though?
foreplay in essence.
Yeah,
I
right,
don't know what it is. They probably didn't put on the site that they were making travel arrangements and all that. It was probably the
right.
initial part, and then the communication afterwards went private. We don't know. But
Well,
how's the wine? Because Chris
and
is having wine. I am having coffee. I guess
well,
I could lie to you and tell you the wine's in here, but it's coffee.
you know how much I love an Oregon wine, but this is from my absolute favorite winery. It is Jackar Family Wines. They are fairly new and they are consistently getting 95 ratings for everything they
So
do.
how is it?
So Nebbiolo, this is their first Nebbiolo.
All right, so I'm gonna drink my coffee. Chris is gonna taste the wine, and she's going to tell you what she thinks about the
I like
wine.
their Pinot better. Um, but the Nebbiolo is really good. I give it a solid 7.5. It's got the nice little fruitiness of a Nebbiolo. It's a little thinner than a Pinot, and I love my robust wine. Smell is very nice. Mouthfeel is great. It's got a little bit more tannin, but
Mouth feels
overall,
great, and we're talking about bondage.
something though, because I think this is really interesting. And
What's your
again,
safe word, Chris?
yeah. So
You
I'm
wanna bring up
sure
something else while we're
we've
talking
got
about
more.
bondage, mouth?
So There was a recent, the famous actress Regina King, who's gotten a lot of awards for her acting. Her son died, mental
Oh,
health issues of suicide, and she spent quite a bit of time out of the public eye because she didn't want to talk about it. And what she said recently is, you know what? He was an adult. He was like 27, 28. She goes, we'd been working for a long time on his issues. I had to respect his decision that it was more painful for him to live than to make the choice he did. She goes, so I'm going to respect that decision. And I do think, again, she had
you're
money.
giving me chills because
He
I
had,
mean, I
he had,
I've had family members.
mhm,
My ex-husband had a similar situation happen in his
mm,
family, and another friend who's gone through this, and, I think that is something because
yeah,
there's a lot of pain leading up to it. Generally, unless you have the situation where you had the guy in the Hamptons that was having financial problems and
right.
nothing has come out, maybe mental health was there, I don't
Yeah,
know, or it
yeah,
could be a snap desperation, but a lot of times when you hear about this, there's a lot of mental health concerns leading up to that, and it's not just that Hamptons thing where it
mhm,
seemed like everything was rosy and fun, but he was hiding the financial end and
yeah.
didn't know
Well,
what to do.
what I appreciate the bravery of Regina to say, we worked together for years to
Yeah.
provide him with the assistance he needed. And again, because of her being a successful actress, they had the funds to get mental health help. And the answer was still, it was too hard for him.
So
And
we do
so,
wanna say talking about this, if you feel that you're suicidal, please reach out to
hmm
somebody and
hmm
talk to somebody because, a lot of times that in that moment you're there, with the right help that can pass.
hmm
So please reach out, talk to people, let people I'm sure there are people in your life, even though you may
hmm
not feel that way, that you have that support in that moment. But usually people do have,
well,
there are people that want to support you. They
there are,
want to be there and with you
and
and
there's
help
also
you.
the anonymous suicide hotlines where if you feel it's just too hard to talk about some of the terrible things that may have happened that have caused you to get in that situation, that there's no judgment because they don't know you and they're just there to be an ear for you.
Well, I
And
think Trump shut that down, but you can call the one in Canada because they jumped in and said that even if funding for those that the hotline is shut
Mhm.
down, that they are happy to talk to people in the United States as well. All right. Well, Chris, this was like started off as our listeners probably thought, oh, well, this is we're talking bondage and then we all of a sudden went to suicide. So this is
Mhm.
pretty heavy. I guess that wine was a heavier wine because it was in Oregon. And so we want to ask everybody to comment below. Tell me what you think. Suggest wines. Suggest topics. And
And I do have to say this
I'm
though.
gonna let Chris say the last part because I don't have wine.
Well, before I say the last part, keep in mind this year, the next legislative session, a bill has been filed for Florida to consider some form of death with dignity. Even conservative pro-life Florida is looking at it and saying, if somebody's terminal, at what point are we taking away their right to die with dignity? So
Are you
I don't
sure
think
it's that conservatives aren't saying that the
I
insurance companies don't want to pay for the
I don't think
terminal
it's gonna
illness?
pass. I don't think it's gonna pass. It's the first time it's been floated, though, so that's what I'm saying. It's
Right.
kind of interesting that it's out there, but in the meantime, I do wanna say that, cheers.
Cheers. Solo cheers.
Solo cheers to me for your coffee, and we'll see you at the next bottle.
All right.